All right, remember, the machine knows if you're lying. First statement, Carvana will give you a real offer on your car all online.
False.
True, actually. You can sell your car in minutes.
False? That's gotta be...
True again. Carvana will pick up your car from your door, or you can drop it off at one of their car vending machines.
Sounds too good to be true, so true.
Finally caught on. Nice job. Honesty isn't just their policy, it's their entire model. Sell your car today, too.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
Are you noticing your car insurance rate creep up even without tickets or claims? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry handles the legwork by comparing quotes side by side from over 50 top insurers, so you can confidently hit buy. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Jerry even tracks rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Don't settle for higher rates. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
I'm Paul Dillon, and this is Sober Awkward.
The kettle's boiled, Vic.
Great. Perfect timing. Just a dash of milk for me, please, mate.
Here you go. Shall we get started then?
Have you ever woken up on a Sunday morning and said, I'm never drinking again, and then found yourself waving $50 at a barman by happy hour?
Are you wondering why everyone else can stop at 1 while you head to a dodgy after-party with a weird bloke called Disco Dave? If so, it might be time to take a deeper look at your relationship with your reliable social crutch, alcohol.
On each episode, we'll investigate our own dysfunctional dealings with booze and find out if it's possible to stop this deeply ingrained habit before things get too messy.
Yep, we're going to open up a shame shed of humiliating drinking stories to help you understand why waking up from a booze coma each weekend with a kebab sticking out of your top pocket might actually be negatively impacting your health.
Hamish and I are here to delve into what it's like being sober, an unwanted warts and all look into why giving up those cheeky pints or putting down those mummy wines will make you feel happier, help your anxiety and mental health, and turn you into the most sparkly, authentic version of you.
Won't that mean I become boring though, Vic?
Well, Hamish, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Hamish Adams-Cairns.
And this is Sober Awkward.
My guest today is Paul Dillon, author, educator, social commentator, podcaster and founder of DARTA, or Drug and Alcohol Research and Training Australia. If you grew up in Australia, there's a decent chance that Paul visited your school to present a workshop on drugs and alcohol. He's been doing this for over 30 years, both across Australia and internationally in the UK, Philippines, New Zealand and Indonesia. Not only limited to schools, Paul's work broke into the world of sport in the build-up to the Sydney Olympic Games. He's worked with the Australian Institute of Sports, the Australian Cricketers Association, the Rugby Union Players Association and the Football Federation to help develop training sessions around alcohol and other drug safety. He's worked with the New South Wales Government, the World Health Organisation and the UN, and regularly appears on radio and television, including on The Project, Sunrise and The Today Show. It's fairly safe to say that nobody has had a bigger impact on educating, in particular Australian teenagers, on the risks and drugs of alcohol in the last 30 years than Paul Dillon. Welcome to Sober Awkward, Paul.
Wow, Hamish, I paid you a lot of money for that introduction. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Thank you.
That is just your life on paper, Paul.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Great to be here.
What particularly drew me to your work was that your area of expertise is a gap in our knowledge on the podcast. So you've spoken to thousands of teenagers, particularly we'll be focusing on alcohol. And neither Vic nor I have teenage children, but we're aware that we will both have to, at some point, have that awkward conversation with them about booze. And lots of our listeners are going through this at the moment. They're not sure what to say, they're not sure how to approach it, and it's something that I really want us to cover today. But before I get into it, you had a very short and confusing relationship with Long Island iced teas.
When I first moved to Sydney, I had never drunk alcohol. My parents don't drink.
Yes.
I never really saw alcohol in my family at all. I have two younger brothers, both who do drink, but very kind of low levels. When I moved to Sydney, I started going out and I was going to places where people were drinking. And I suppose it wasn't peer pressure, but much more social influence came into play, that it was just something you did. So I would go to bars, etc. And one day I was offered a Long Island tea and I thought, oh, because I had no idea about alcohol, nothing. I thought, oh, that sounds good. It's a tea. So, and they were huge. They were enormous, great big things. And I drank them completely innocently. Thought I felt really, really good. But thought it must have been the environment and the people I was with. And it was a number of weeks later, because I kept going to this kind of Sunday session that, and 1 week someone turned around and said, Paul, I thought you said you didn't drink. And I go, well, I don't. And they go, well, you have a Long Island tea. And I said, but it's a tea. And the look I got was of, are you a complete moron? So, yeah, it's always, I'm currently doing parent sessions, which involves this little section about standard drinks and how much you give to your child to take to a party. And I spent a morning in a bottle shop just going through, looking at the backs of drinks, because I don't have, I don't have alcohol in my house. I don't see it. So, that was an interesting experience as well, spending some time sitting in a bottle shop just looking at alcohol.
I like the innocence of it. Like, I only drink Long Island iced tea and espresso martinis. I don't drink alcohol. I don't know what you're talking about. So the obvious question is why? How did you end up in the position that you are today? And from what I can tell, the sort of butterfly effect of your career harks back to this conversation that you had with your cousin. Would you mind telling us that story?
Yeah. My family's originally from the UK, and my mum and my dad live in Perth. I had a phone call to say that my cousin who lived in the UK, they just discovered was a heroin user. He was in big trouble. His mother, my auntie, was actually buying heroin for him off the streets to kind of keep him safe. And my mum and dad were beside themselves and said, Paul, can you go over and kind of try to fix it up in some way, help getting a service, etc. So I went over, spent a lot of time with him. He was a lovely young man and fascinated by what I did, absolutely fascinated. He'd got into a whole pile of different things through his late teens. And we had one conversation which really changed my life, I think. He said, he was asking me all these questions. And I said, look, is there something that someone could have done to kind of change the course of your life a little bit? Because it just seems you are desperate for information. You want to know, what you're doing to yourself and how to reduce the harm and all that kind of thing. And he said, I just wish someone had told me what I wanted to know rather than what they thought I needed to know. And that was it was a pivotal moment in my life where all of a sudden I thought, well, that's really the crux of it here. We really, as adults, we believe we know what young people, the information they should have, instead of going and asking them. And it really I spent about a year. I was very, very fortunate when I started doing what I do, because I was working at the University of New South Wales. I was working in a research centre. I had a great boss who gave me some time to basically go out and speak to young people before I went into schools to deliver any education and ask them what they wanted. And they just simply want really two things: how to actually look after their friends, how to keep their friends safe, and how to look after themselves. That's it. They're not interested in long-term, short-term effects of anything or all that kind of stuff. Of course, that kind of fits into it, but it basically is some just stuff about safety. Most young people do not want to hurt themselves or anybody else. They want to keep safe. And just having a bit of a shift in the way we speak to young people makes a heck of a lot of difference. I
think that different mindset is going to be so helpful to parents listening. I can't tell you how often we get emails from particular mums who'll go, I've just found a bottle of beer hidden under my 14-year-old's bedroom. What do I say? And I think just going, okay, instead of telling them, maybe ask them some questions. I don't think anyone that I've ever spoken to has thought of it that way around. And it seems, once you explain it, the obvious way around, right? Let's ask them some questions about what they want to know rather than keep telling them what we think they need to know. A weird thing happens with this podcast, whereas people come up to us subtly and say, look, my partner is an overdrinker. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the episode of your podcast in the car and hope that it subliminally filters into them without me pushing. I know people will be doing that about this episode with their teenagers. So what I wanted to do was have almost a quick fire question round where we are going to dispel some myths about drinking that I wish I knew when I was a teenager. Does that make sense? You understand the rules?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm not good with quick, rapid fire questions, but I'll do my very best.
Your answers don't have to be rapid, but we'll keep them shortish so I can get... There's only about 6 of these, Okay, first question. Can pulling a tactical vomit sober you up?
No. Certainly, it may make you feel better in the short term because when you have vomited, you release a whole pile of endorphins, which make you feel better. But unfortunately, you're drunk. Put simply, you're drunk because the alcohol has reached your brain. And what you do when you vomit the contents of your stomach. The only way it could work is if you vomited your brain out. And if you do that, then you've got a real problem. The other problem with the tactical vomit is it's a different kind of vomit. Forcing yourself to vomit, it's not a natural vomit, so it's much more likely to cause damage. And that's what you do tend to see either in the back of the throat or the eyes where you get the little kind of red dots.
I'm 33 years old. I've been sober for 2 years, and I did not know that was true until last week. I heard you say it elsewhere. Does mixing certain drinks make me more drunk?
Oh, gee, that's a really tough one. Look, alcohol is alcohol is alcohol. I think that's really important to remember. There are things like, beer and wine and all the different things.
Rhyming sayings, yeah.
Yeah, all those rhyming sayings that exist. From what I can find, and it's very difficult to find good evidence on this. A lot of the information we have is based on what we kind of think instead of the research. Some research suggests is that it's not so much the actual alcohol, it's mixing the alcohol. It's mixing the fruits and vegetables, which are the base of the alcoholic drink. So, wine, the yeast in beer and the grapes in wine, that is the fermented part is the part that's most probably going to be the issue and causes the stomach upsets, things like that.
Is it a good idea to put your mate to bed if they're drunk, to sleep it off?
Absolutely not. This is one of the, if you look at some of the reasons why people die when it comes to alcohol, it's quite high up there that they die in their own beds. You never put someone to bed to sleep it off unless you know that they are sober enough for that to happen. I always say to young people, 3 simple little tests that they have to pass. Can they walk? Can they talk? And can they answer a question? They don't have to answer, something from the Encyclopedia Britannica, but, what is your name? Where do you live? Simple things. The trouble with putting them to bed is that you don't know. Most people are unaware of the last drink that person when they had their last drink. So you don't know if this is as drunk as they're going to get. Is there still alcohol in their stomach that has yet to reach their brain? If you put them to bed at that point, what's going to happen is that alcohol hits their brain and they even get more drunk. They roll onto their backs, they choke on their own vomit, their breathing just simply stops. There's so many things. And unfortunately, over the years, I've been involved with a number of deaths. And I have to say, particularly in regional centres, this is a very big thing in the country where people put mates to bed. It's kind of the accepted thing to do. It's a very dangerous thing to do. Of course, the trouble is most drunk people, if you're looking after them, they will say at some point, I just want to go to bed. Of course. If they're going to, just make sure you put them into the recovery position and you sit and you monitor them. Doctors recommend that you monitor them for at least 30 minutes and you're just wanting a steady breath. And of course, you put a pillow behind their back or something just so that they can't roll back onto their back through the night.
Wonderful. Good advice. If you eat bread when you're drunk, does it sober you up?
This is one of the classic myths that I've been struggling with for years and years and years. We think we know where this comes from. It's a very, very new myth. It's not something, certainly in my teen years, it certainly wasn't a part of the kind of the alcohol looking after a drunk person story. It really has been maybe the last 20, 30 years where it's become very big. It certainly can't sober you up. Once again, why are you drunk? You're drunk because of your brain. Alcohol has reached your brain. Putting alcohol into your stomach does not soak up the alcohol. That makes no sense whatsoever. If you think about it for a very short period of time, it makes no sense. The trouble is when you feed someone bread when they're drunk, the risk of them choking to death is very high. I've been involved with 3 cases of young men who all died when they were force-fed bread when they were drunk.
Wow.
Now, where does this come from? We believe it comes from the fact that when you get drunk, when you smoke cannabis, you get the munchies. When you drink alcohol, you get what is often referred to now as the drunchies. which is you don't get a desire for sweet foods, you get a desire for carbs. That's why McDonald's is so incredibly busy at midnight.
Yes. Why kebabs are still a thing.
Yeah, and so what often happens is people go home, they walk straight to the kitchen, and often it's a slice of bread they go to grab. It's feeding that kind of the desire to eat, and so certainly there's a desire to eat bread when you're drunk. So we believe that's where it most probably came from. But it's a dangerous practice. It doesn't work. Should be obliterated immediately.
Okay, good. What about cold showers? Can they sober you up?
No, once again, while you're drunk because of your brain. It doesn't matter how much cold water you put on top of your head, it isn't going to help. You still see this in movies to this day where someone gets drunk. And the reason people do it, it's twofold. I think it's certainly cold water on someone who is affected by alcohol is going to most probably kind of shock them to some extent. And so they kind of rouse to some extent. But as I always say, the one place you don't take a drunk person is a bathroom. There are so many dangers there. Hard floors, sharp edges, and a huge sheet of glass. And I tell young people the story about a girl I met on the northern beaches of Sydney many years ago who came up to me, and this poor young woman was so badly scarred because her friends had tried to put her under the cold shower in a bath. And as they lifted her, she fell and she smashed into the shower screen. The glass just scarred her terribly. So, and you hear repeated stories of young people having injuries in bathrooms. If someone needs to be cleaned up, take the water to the drunk person. Don't take the drunk person to the water.
Gosh. One final one, which is to do with hangover prevention. I was convinced if I drank, it was actually, I would say a pint, it was actually like a flower pot vase worth of water before going to bed, maybe with a Barocca in it or some sort of hydrolyte, it would cure my hangover. Is there any truth to this theory?
If you had no water all the way through the night, to drink water before you go to bed is a good idea, absolutely. But if you really want to prevent a hangover, and it's about, the best way to prevent a hangover is not to drink. I mean, that's probably the most effective. But, you start the night, as I always say to young people, you start the night with a glass of water. You have it water, alcohol. You do that. Alcohol is dehydrating. Water will rehydrate. And one of the main causes of a hangover is dehydration. It's not the only cause. And I'm sure you've covered that topic before. But, a big one is what we call congeners. These little bits of almost dirt or debris that are in alcohol. The darker the alcohol, the more the congeners. And so that's the other, and there are a couple of other things as well that cause a hangover. But if you can prevent dehydration or prepare for dehydration, your risk of a hangover is less, and what hangover you have will be reduced to some extent. So, I've worked with a lot of sports people over the years, and their way of dealing with things is to go and get absolutely smashed all night and then drink a litre of water before they go to bed. And, trying to get them to move that, to shift that, to say, drink the water through the night is a good idea, as well as, possibly preventing a hangover. It also kind of adds a little bit of space in between alcoholic drinks. You don't have to drink a litre of it each time, just a glass. And it's certainly going to help.
End of the quickfire round. Well done. You got through it.
I didn't give quickfire answers there, but
that's okay. They're important answers. It's never the optimal way to teach, but scaring someone with a fact can often shock them into change. And there are two that I heard you detail in a recent interview that really stood out for me as two that I'd never heard before. The first is that one 14 to 17-year-old dies every weekend in Australia because of the effects of alcohol. And a person who starts drinking as a young teen is 4 times more likely to develop an alcohol dependence later in life than someone who starts drinking at an older age. Is the battle for parents here not so much about letting their children drink at all, but just about delaying the age of that first drink?
Yeah, I think we live in a society where alcohol is, it's there. I think things have changed dramatically in my time of working in this field around alcohol. We talk about it in a much more honest way. We've got growing numbers of people who make a decision not to drink alcohol. In many cases, that is kind of seen as more socially acceptable than it once was. I've never drunk alcohol, and I have to say that Years ago, if I refused to drink, someone would look at me and say, "What's wrong with you?"
Of course.
Now, that doesn't happen quite so often.
Those are the brave ones that ask. The less brave ones just judge you, play a film of what they think you were like when you were drinking and don't say anything at all.
Yeah, I think many women I know who say they don't drink, the immediate response is, "Are you pregnant?" I don't have that option.
Yes.
So I think usually, and because of what I do, people think that I had a problem with alcohol at some point. I don't necessarily think that's so much the case now as it was. It certainly still is, but nowhere near as much as it was. It's become a little bit more socially acceptable to drink. But in terms of our young people, it's just so rewarding for me to stand in front of the first group of young people I see are year 10, so they're 15, and stand there and say, "I don't drink, I never have drunk," and I don't make a big deal about that, but I say, what you'll need in your social group is one person who's going to be, I call them the designated water person, the person who basically says, before anyone has a drink, "Oh, we need to have water. It's water time." That's what I've done it for a long time. And to see the change in the response to that over particularly the last 15 years is quite remarkable. Years ago, when I said it, you could see the people in the room, because the person who's the designated water person is always going to be the non-drinker,
of course,
in their social group. And so what happened in the past was you could see the person, but they didn't make a big deal about it. In fact, they were very, very sedate. Now, literally everyone in the room, the little social group, point to the person who is the non-drinker and they pat him on the back, and they look incredibly happy with themselves. And I think that's the most wonderful thing about this now, that we do have young people who feel good about their choices. I pass no judgment on anyone who drinks, and I say that very clearly. Everything I do in my talks, I say, if you make a decision to drink, that is your choice. But there are people who make a decision not to, and that's absolutely fine. I just wish that parents would support that as much as the kids do, because I have to say, I don't think it's happened very much this year, but in previous years, one of the most scary things that I would get is a parent coming up and going, "Look, we just want to talk to you about our Johnny. We're very, very worried about him." And I'd say, "Oh, so what's wrong? How old's Johnny?" And the guy's 15. He doesn't drink. And I would get that regularly.
Really?
Regularly. And it would always be both parents coming up. It would never just be one, always be both. I think they kind of needed the support of each other to do it. And I would then say to them, "Well, what's your problem? What's the problem with the fact that he does?" And it was always the same response, always. And it was, "Well, he won't fit in, will he?"
Yes.
That fear of social exclusion for parents is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Whether it happened to them or whether it happened to someone they know, they want their child to feel, to be safe and to have friends. I mean, that's what they want. They don't want their child to be rejected by their peers. So I totally get it. But it would be wonderful if when a child makes a decision not to drink and tells their parents they don't drink, that a parent would kind of embrace it.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
All right, remember, the machine knows if you're lying. First statement, Carvana will give you a real offer on your car all online.
False.
True, actually. You can sell your car in minutes.
False? That's gotta be...
True again. Carvana will pick up your car from your door, or you can drop it off at one of their car vending machines.
Sounds too good to be true, so true.
Finally caught on. Nice job. Honesty isn't just their policy, it's their entire model. Sell your car today, too.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
I had one girl, and I love this story, years ago, and I'd seen her in, I don't know, year 10 maybe, and she said, I don't drink, and I've spoken about it with my parents, and they support me. They don't quite understand why, because they both drink, and on and on. And then the following year I saw her, I said, "How are you going? How are your parents?" She said, "They're great, but now I'm battling my grandparents." And I was just like, my goodness. I mean, this poor young woman just had a battle constantly.
Yeah.
I don't think I've answered your question there, but I know where I was going. But yeah, absolutely. because we live in a culture where alcohol is not necessarily socially accepted, but socially expected in many cases, it's a challenge to actually prevent. I mean, although we've got growing numbers of young people choosing not to drink, the vast majority will. Mm-hmm. And that's really important to acknowledge. And the longer we can delay their first drink, the evidence says really, really clearly it's good in so many ways. Now, that can be really, really tough, can be really, really hard, because there are young people who really want to drink. Yeah. And you can kind of understand why, because they're growing up. They've just, particularly in that 14, 15-year-old age group, which is the age group where you see that kind of thing happening. If you look at brain development and what's happening to them, the influence of the family is starting to decrease a little bit. They're finding their own identity that is usually linked to their peers. So their peers become much more influential. They're starting to socialize at night, going to parties. And if they look around them in general society, when people go out and adults go out and socialize, alcohol is a part of that. Yes. So it can't be a big surprise to anyone that young people want to drink as well. How can that be a surprise? Mm-hmm. But if you can delay it for as long as you possibly can, there are so many benefits, but it is hard. It's difficult. And I was only on the phone to a mum yesterday morning for about 3 hours where she is just desperate. She has a 14-year-old who literally is walking out of the house on Thursday night, not coming home until Tuesday. She's 14 and she's been battling with her for a long time, trying to say, we don't want you to drink. We don't want you to go to parties, all that kind of stuff. And finally, this girl just pulled completely away. She's now moving in with an 18-year-old young man, and the mum is just devastated. Yeah. And as much as, we always say the most important word that you could say, well, the most important 3 words you could say to your kid is, I love you. And the 4th is no. It's a really important word that establishes rules and boundaries. But if you say no, 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 no to your child constantly around that age of 14, 15, it's highly likely they're going to pull away and you'll lose them. And trying to get them back on track and bring them back to you again can be really hard. So as a result, parents have to kind of work out what works with that particular child in their family at that time. And there's no rule book. I wish there was.
Yeah. What advice can you give to a mum in that position? I mean, you can't say it's too late. What do they do?
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is with parents in those sorts of situations, they just feel alone, because trying to seek help. I mean, in that parent's case, for example, she's been to docs and all that kind of stuff to try to say, well, my child is at risk. She's living with an 18-year-old and I don't know who this person is, etc. And trying to get anything done in that area is so difficult because, of course, the 14-year-old can then go to and say she wants to leave her family and accuse her family of things. So it's a nightmare. It's not easy. And so that's why I always say to parents, and pretty well any parenting expert in Australia will say, you've got to look at your particular situation and work out what's going to work for you. As I said, there's no rule book. If your child is pushing every one of your buttons and saying no isn't working, then you've just got to adapt and say, okay, well, I'd love to delay this happening, but it's not going to work. So I need to kind of put things into place that are going to keep you as safe as possible at this time. And, for a 14-year-old girl who's living with an 18-year-old young man, that's really tough to do. Yeah. And with the addition of alcohol and other things on top of that, it's really, really hard.
It's interesting, that parent-child dynamic. I would say, I can't tell you how many people I speak to who say that they would love to be sober, but they're scared of being rejected by their family. I come from a drinking family. I couldn't go home for Christmas and not drink. It's just impossible. This is just the family I was born into, so I'll have to keep drinking. I always think the reverse of that, when listeners of our podcast reach out and say, I don't know what to say to my kids about this. Like, you are sober. Like, you are surely half of the battle is presenting that good example of, okay, cool, I don't drink to have fun. There's no alcohol in this house. You make your own decisions based on that. I don't know how much of it is nature versus nurture, but I'm sure that there is an element of relief in taking ownership over the fact, okay, I'm a parent, I don't drink. Over to you, little one.
Yeah, I think the danger with some parents who have had problems with alcohol is that instead of using it as a teaching moment that just comes naturally and remembering all the time that your child has been watching you for a very, very long time and has learned so much from just watching you, to turn it into kind of a lecture about, well, this is what I do, that might work for a primary school child, but when they enter that adolescent phase, as I said, that 14, 15-year-old, it's just going to be seen as, well, I'm not as stupid as you. It's not going to be, that's not going to happen to me. It's much more, I think we talked about when you and I first had a little bit of a chat, there's so much research now to show, particularly Scandinavian research, looking at the impact of what young people learn, not in their teen years, but what they know about alcohol by the age of 3. I wrote a book many, many years ago, and I interviewed a whole pile of parents. And one of the most fascinating things that I had was I met these parents who were from Asian descent and lovely mum and dad who had nothing to do with alcohol at all. None of their family, both sides, no, alcohol was no part of their world. They had a 15-year-old son and they were terrified about the issue of alcohol. And so they said, and they totally believed the only way they could actually deal with it was if they started drinking themselves.
What?
Yep. Because if they drank themselves, there would be some kind of
common ground.
Yeah. And I kept saying to them, and these were not parents who lectured or anything. They were just parents, terrific, wonderful, loving parents. And they didn't really need to say anything about alcohol to their son because he'd learned so much from watching them from the time he was born to now when he was 15. Now, of course, if all of a sudden he went off the rails and, he started drinking in a very, very risky way, then they'd have to reassess. But, have a conversation. But to all of a sudden decide, let's drink, I think this is an area where parents are really they're not quite sure. And one of the main reasons for that is, I'm often asked, what does the research say? Can you give me 3 dot points? And I can go, no, because I have to say things have changed so much over the time that I've been doing this. Trends, parenting trends come and go. And, you can meet a parent who was reading books 20 years ago that said ABC. Now, parents will read books and they'll say a completely different thing. So it's hard.
You mentioned earlier that particularly in the last 15 years, you've seen a shift in the approaches to alcohol in kids. I've got a few theories about why that might be, but you've been in this game much longer than me. What do you think it is that is behind this sobriety wave, this rise in popularity, the fact that young people are drinking far less than they used to be?
Well, there's some fantastic research that came out last year where a group of researchers around the world, they looked at all the possible reasons that this could have occurred. They then looked at each one and kind of broke it down and it boiled down to 2 simple things for them. They thought that certainly parenting had changed, parenting knowledge, parenting had changed. And the other thing, which I think is really interesting, is kids just didn't have the time anymore.
Right,
they were really, really busy.
Yeah.
And, my mum always used to say, keep them busy, keep them off the streets. And it's kind of true. And today's kids have so many activities and things available to them. So that's what that research said. Then what happened was a group of young people, it was a UK study that looked at young people and said, why do you think this is occurring? And interestingly, the parenting thing went right out the window for them. They didn't think that was the reason. Once again, their big one was that they just didn't have the time. A whole pile of other things were put forward, like increasing social media, and that socializing was not necessarily done face-to-face. It was much more online. Was this just a healthier group of young people? All of those were kind of just wiped off. The one that they didn't look at, which I've always said, and my belief is that I just think the attitude towards alcohol has just changed a bit. It's just had this little bit of a shift where all of a sudden it's okay if you don't drink. And non-drinking has social value. It's a trickle-down effect from the designated driver, I believe. This whole idea of that if you're in a group of, I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this would know that if they're with their group of friends and they're all going out, you get invited because you're the non-drinker and you drive everyone home.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same in schools. And kids can actually also use the designated driver as a reason to choose not to drink. I think there was a real kind of back in the mid-90s where parents were saying, well, should I give my kids fake alcohol? All of those kind of things, because there is so much pressure on them to drink. You don't have to do those things as much anymore. It's actually kids if you don't drink, you're a really valued member of a social group in teenagers. Now, that said, the trouble is if you are the non-drinker, it gets to a point, and this is my life, it gets to a point where you get a little bit bored with going out because you're constantly mopping up mess and looking after people. And
talking to the pregnant women.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like at some point, and teenagers, many school kids say to me, I don't want to look after my friends anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a fun night out. They'll do it for a certain extent, but eventually they kind of move from, if they're hanging out with risky drinkers, they'll move to a different group who have a little bit of a different, values and attitudes.
I want to ask you an impossible question. I grew up in the French school system where the whole sort of, we'll give our kids a small diluted thimble of red wine when they're 12, 13 is the norm. It's probably one of the questions that I get asked the most. I know that you get asked it all the time as well, which is, okay, I'm a worried parent. Is my kid better off if I'm the person that introduces them to alcohol in a safe way, under my supervision, a beer with dinner? Is that the way to do it? And I know that there is not one rule for all families and every family is different, but how do you approach that question? Because I'm sure parents are asking you it all the time.
Yeah, well, the whole kind of concept of the Mediterranean model is really, really interesting. It's been researched for, decades and decades. And the one thing that we can say about the Mediterranean model is that evidence that we have suggests that it does not work well here. You can't translate it. Yeah. You can't translate it and pick it up and then drop it in. There's some amazing research done by a researcher called John Tombaru in Melbourne, who basically compared Melbourne families to families in other countries. And a really interesting piece of research. What I will say is that the Mediterranean model is not working very well in the Mediterranean anymore. For many years, I had France stuffed down my throat about the fact that, French do this. France now has an underage drinking law. They've never had it in the past. Yeah. That was introduced. And that was introduced because of a phenomenon they did not understand, which was le binge drinking. So you can't say that it works there. What I say is, and I did a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald about a study. I was quoted. I was on page 1. And I used to do a lot of media. I don't really do media very much anymore. The reason I don't was that story just kind of reinforced why I don't. Because I got trolled, like seriously, by people saying, you spoiled people's fun and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. And as I make very clear, I am not saying no one has the right to tell anyone how to parent their child. I certainly don't. All I can say is this is what the research says. I think if you were brought up with a glass of wine, with a meal, surrounded by your family, and it worked for you, and you wish to do that in your family, absolutely fine. But the Mediterranean model is you just don't do that. It's accompanied by rules about how you drink, what you drink, when you drink. It doesn't mean, I'll give you some wine with your meal, and on Saturday night you could take 2 bottles of something to take to a party. That's not the Mediterranean model. And unfortunately, that's how it's kind of interpreted, that it's like, because I do this, A, B, C, D, and E will happen as a result of it, and my child will be protected. No, that's not the Mediterranean model. You speak to French families from 20 years ago, they weren't given a bottle of wine to take to a party on a Saturday night. I mean, that's not what happened. And in many cases, it still doesn't happen in parts of Europe, that kind of idea. So it's a tough one. I just think you have to look at your own family experience, what your values are, and work. And then, very importantly, look at the child you're actually dealing with, because every child will be different in the family. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that parents most probably make, is that something works for their first child. Something has worked very, very effectively. Yeah. And then they start to do it for the second one, and it's a disaster. And they can't quite understand why. There's that whole middle child syndrome that everyone talks about. Some amazing research about why that happens. And it happens for a really simple reason. For your first child, you only have one. There's one. You can focus on that one. You create rules. You're very interested, engaged in it. Of course, the second one comes along. You've still got the first one, unless you're giving it away. And what happens is that you got to deal with 2. This one's at this stage, this one's at this stage. You're trying to put in put in the same. It usually doesn't work very well. And so you kind of got to look at all those things. That's hard. And then you've got the additional issue of there are typically two parents, sometimes more. Not all of them are going to have the same values.
Yeah.
And in this area, oh, my goodness me, if you can find two parents that have the same values and attitudes about underage drinking, then you're doing really, really well. It usually doesn't happen. And of course, who does a child look for answers to everything? For the weakest link.
Exactly. I was going to say the more lax parents.
They're going to find the weakest link. They're going to silo you. They're going to separate you, and they're going to beat the hell out of you until they get what they want. And then they set you up against one another. I mean, look, it's not that today's kids are any more manipulative than we were. It's just exactly the same. My whole issue with this, with alcohol and parenting, and I say it to parents all the time. First off, my sister-in-law says to me very, very clearly, she said, Paul, it's so good for you to say all this stuff. You don't have kids. And I make that very clear in all my talks. If I had kids, they'd live in a cellar, they'd be chained to a wall, and they'd never be allowed out.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, over the years of doing this, I've worked with parents who've lost their children. Out of the 13 that I can think of that I had direct contact with, that I often talk about, the 13, 12 of them were due to alcohol. Or most of them were around 15 years old. Young people who went to a party, went to a gathering and never came home. Most of those deaths all of them were totally preventable. The young people around them didn't know how to respond. Parents had made decisions that they didn't feel comfortable with. They didn't necessarily want to do what they did. And can I tell you, when you meet a parent who's lost a child who didn't follow their heart, made a decision based on what they thought everyone else was doing,
Of course.
they never forgive themselves, ever. And I think at the back of my mind all the time, and I've got maybe about 3 particular young people I can think of and their families, and one particular mum from Melbourne who I knew for many, many years. And I've got them at the back of my head all the time where I think, this is such an important issue. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not trying to impose my values on you, but just think about this. Just put it back of your head. Something bad could happen. And it's not about spoiling their fun. It's not about ruining their lives. As I said, it's not about passing judgment. It's just about, even if it's for a split second, things could go wrong. Alcohol causes a lot of problems. For the vast majority of people who drink responsibly, they never have an issue with it. Really, really important. Many, many people don't. But when it does go wrong, it typically goes terribly wrong, particularly when it comes to young people.
I just want to end by saying, Paul, firstly, I don't think it's an understatement to say that you are saving lives through the work you do. And I think the core of your success, I think, is something that we have in common as well on the podcast, which is not to tell people what to do, not to tell people that alcohol is evil and you should never do it, but to try and educate people about what this substance is, the effect it has, and how to stay safe. And I just want to thank you on behalf of anyone listening, because I think not only are you helping teenagers that you speak to almost every single day for 30 years by the sounds of things, but inadvertently you're helping the parents as well. So on behalf of all of them, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Hamish, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm really, really glad you invited me.
Thank you.
If you're questioning your relationship with booze, you're struggling to moderate, or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for some support.
Yeah, just talk to a mate about how you're feeling, contact a local doctor, find an AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yeah, just head to www.cuppa.community.
Remember, if you're questioning yourself, it might be time to seek support.
Even though this journey can be awkward, it is definitely worth it. And if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to review it, rate it, and share it with your mates.
They have to share it with their mates?
Yeah, of course they do. I'm not doing this for nothing, Hamish. Bloody hell.
How do they share it?
I don't know, just write it on the...
If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson star in Die My Love, a ferocious portrait of a woman engulfed by love and madness. Lawrence and Pattinson play a passionate couple who, after moving to an isolated house in the country, find their relationship unraveling following the birth of their first child. Vanity Fair hails Lawrence's performance as astonishing, and Time calls it the kind of performance you go to the movies for. From director Lynn Ramsey, Die My Love is now playing only in theaters, rated R.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base, plus free premium delivery. Price is higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
So, as you probably know, my comedy memoir, 1,000 Wasted Sundays, is officially out. All my magnificent fuck-uppery in one awkward hit. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy, it's now available from all good bookstores.
We always say all good bookstores, don't we?
Yeah.
Are there bad
No,
bookstores?
probably ones with moody sellers.
Oh yeah, really
Yeah.
depressed librarian folk.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So there are probably some, but we're only storing it in the good ones.
It's only made it into the goodies.
You can also get it from all good online retailers. The print version and ebook are out now, and the audiobook will be available in March. I've been writing my memoir for 5 years. It will make you laugh, cry and cringe, and hopefully inspire a few people to reconsider their relationship with booze. If you love the podcast, then I think you'll love the book, even if I do say so myself. Hamish has read it. What did you think?
I feel like I know a little bit too much about you now, to be honest, Vic. Look, I really loved it. It was hilarious and surprisingly moving, but I feel like I've seen you naked in a literary sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From an emotional point of view, seriously, it wobbled my teeny weeny wooden heart, Vic.
Okay.
My teeny little wooden heart.
Well, his teeny little, his wooden heart is broken. Anyway, so if you do manage to get your filthy mitts on a copy, please do me a favour and head to goodreads.com and give me a review. Doing that will help me get it out there to those that need a bit of sober support. So there you have it. My story, unwanted warts and all. Come and get awkward with me.
Not to be too demanding or anything, but seriously, go and buy it
Yeah,
now.
go and buy it. Go and buy it right now.
Yeah, don't just tell your friends, buy it, and then buy your friends one or two.
Yeah, don't give them a copy. Buy it, yeah.
And you know what? Don't be careful where you store it. If you lose it, you can always buy another 5.
Buy another one.
Yeah.